You ready, Craigie? All right, everyone. I'm going to just roll. Welcome, everyone, to my presentation for 2020 and beyond, the era of Providence. Now, the reason why I came up with the era of Providence is because this is the death of time itself. And there's a new time system that is coming in our lives, and it is one that has been, in a universal scale, so compressed that the only thing that happens when you compress something so much is it, like a black hole, turns into a new system. But when we look at this decade, and we even look at 2020 alone, 2020 is really a rocket ship. And I'm going to show you guys the power of the rocket ship that this is, but I'm going to show you that not only by using events in the history that we have lived through in life, and the transits that we're going through in 2020 and beyond are all connected to now. That whenever you compress time and whenever you look at time itself, you're going to realize that history does repeat itself. Time does repeat itself, but in different ways. But it gets more intense when you get the most dramatic events in time all happening at the same time. So it's almost kind of like how dominoes would be like, you have a couple dominoes and they kind of fall when you're a kid. But if you ever watch the movie V is for Vendetta, there's that moment when he's been plotting and planning his revenge against the government, I guess, the whole time. And at the very last scene, he kicks the dominoes down and they all go out and his whole plan goes into initiation. And what's interesting is, whether you want to call it God or the universe, there is a major moment here in life that we are all at this moment of prophecy. Providence and prophecy have a lot in common. And I've actually done an event with prophecy as the name. But you know, Providence, ironically, has a lot to also do with the Mayflower and have to do with the settlers that came and the pilgrims, which I think is ironic today, and how pilgrims are now looked at as these horrible people that killed a lot of people and stole their land. And it kind of hurts for me, as my family actually comes from the Mayflower, and I'm a direct descendant of the Mayflower Society, Mayflower Compact signer. And the history actually has been thwarted in the wrong directions. If you don't know, but Providence, Rhode Island is where the settlers ended up years later after they landed in 1620. So it wasn't like, these 50 people came over and just started killing Indians. It took half a century until everybody kind of followed them, and those people were the ones that did that. But I'm going to show you all that right now we are all in the biggest quest of our lives that has initiated. And I'm going to use history, I'm going to use astrology, I'm going to use everything that I can to help you understand that you are in a major moment in your life when it comes to understanding what Providence is, and to not be afraid of it, but to step into it. Because if you don't, I don't want to say that you missed the boat or anything, but there is something to say about history is written by those that actually are part of it. When we think of the Renaissance, for example, which is exactly what we're going through right now, the same transit of Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn, I like to look at the examples of right now, we are in a Renaissance. How many people are on YouTube now? How many people are on social media or Instagram models or anything? But how many of them are going to be remembered in history? How many of those people in Renaissance are you going to remember that they were on their little guitar hanging out by the blacksmith shop that were maybe really popular at that time, but nobody remembers them? Providence and destiny is for those that truly listen to it and are not afraid to be bold enough to go into it. And we're in the time where the boldest are going to be remembered. And I know that that actually sounds a little bit harsh, but there is something truth about that, that the universe is asking and to see who is going to show up and who is not going to show up. And even though, as we described kind of earlier, that whole notion of like the little guitarist that was during the Renaissance, it was people like Shakespeare who came out of the Renaissance who like started making stories with drama and love stories with killing each other for the love that made himself known. There's that extra bit of adding more, adding something that is unique and called towards, and also following your own journey, your own sovereign journey. And I think that this is where we're getting in a scary territory in this next decade, when people are starting to think of what we identify as this oneness as more of like turning ourselves into all of the same, which is the scariest thing that could happen in this next decade. Because yes, we are all on the same path, but we are all unique individuals that have something beautiful to bring to that path. And the more that we all try to become a one and a one, that's not how a computer works. It's a 1 and a 0. And if we move into a time where we're all the same color, we're not going to even have the beauty of this world anymore. It's all going to look the same. Oh, here we go. So now we get it. So this is the time for Providence in a way. If you look at the slides right now, this is the Mayflower, 1620. Ironically enough, here in 2020, 400 years ago. September 6th, 1620. So what's kind of crazy about this is you have to remember that this year in 2018, and especially here in 2019, was a major moment when it came to Saturn in Capricorn, sextile Neptune in Pisces. So right now we have Neptune in Pisces, its home sign. And Neptune rules this spirituality. And why do you think spirituality, since Neptune came into Pisces in 2011, became huge? There's no irony that the prophecy of the Mayans in 2012, when Neptune was really in Pisces and really moving forward, became such a real deal. There's imagination with Neptune. But with Saturn in Capricorn, its home sign, it rules ships, ironically enough. It rules destinations, it rules destiny, and it rules this moment in life where you feel called towards something. And we had the sextile all this year, and it's actually still in effect right now, but to be honest with you, it's already kind of moving off. So you've already been called to what you're supposed to do. If you're still searching for it, I just look back at what you already were told, because maybe you're just not happy with what the destiny is. Because in the Pilgrims' case, they weren't happy that they had to leave their home in England because they were practicing a religious order that was more free. It was not Catholicism. You know, the Church of England came out, which is where we get the whole idea of leaving Catholicism and going more into Protestant aspects of Christianity or religious practices. And at this time, King James did not want it that way, and was trying to go back to the old way and trying to bring back the old traditions. And the only way for them to actually feel safe was to actually leave their homes and go to a new world that they had no idea what was there, which took risk, balls, and imagination. And there's something about life right now in your life where you can't feel guilty about, am I just going to stay here and just like, now I'm going to practice the religion, or I'm going to practice this life that I don't agree with anymore? Instead of fighting, they just left and went to a new place. Now, I know we're in a world where everything's been explored, but is that really true is a big question, and I'm not going to answer that one for you. For me, I've always been, since I am a descendant of the Mayflower, and my family's in the Mayflower Society, one of the things in the Mayflower Society it says is to keep the integrity of the understanding of what the Mayflower represented. And that's not happening anymore, you know? Like, it's kind of crazy even when we think about Thanksgiving, you know? Now everybody's like, oh yeah, it's just about killing Indians. They really weren't there, and that's not the truth at all. But there is this moment now in your life where you have to actually go, like, where are you being called to? It might seem like the craziest thing in the whole world, to an imaginative place like an ocean or some sort of place where you feel like you don't know where it's going to go. And ironically enough, it was a 66-day journey. And it was a bunch of people who came together and actually created their own rules. So the Mayflower Compact, if you don't know, that was signed before leaving, was creating a society, creating a set of rules within their own space, their own government, within their own people. Now, I know in the New Age, we talk about this all the time, right? Like, oh yeah, like the New Age, and you know, if you have this, like, that's your twin flame. It's like, we're writing our own compact, spiritual compact right now, if you all don't know. Like, unless you drink a green juice and do yoga, like, you're not spiritual. It's like, is that in the compact? I don't agree with that, because I'll be honest, I maybe drink 2 green juices a year, and I maybe do yoga like once a year. Maybe because somebody's forcing me and it's uncomfortable and I feel bad. Like, you need to do yoga. Like, come here, do this with me. And it's like, oh, well, I guess, you know? But it's not about doing anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. But it is about not being afraid to get out of what is making you uncomfortable. That is the precedent to even getting to a place to where now you can debate whether you want to do yoga or you want to smoke a cigarette. That's not the issue. The issue is, are you in a space to where even you can have those fun debates? Have those fun written laws to be looked at? And in many ways, these are kind of unwritten laws, because the only people that make them sovereign are the people who wrote them and the people that follow them. What's kind of interesting is this is from the Salem witch trials in 1692. So 1620 comes, Mayflower voyage, and here we are, not even 70 years later, and what's interesting about this picture, and I think it's beautiful actually, of this witch, right? She looks like every New Ager in Venice right now. Right? Like, I mean, like, for real, like, you know, it's like, wow. And look at her calling in the light, and everybody's so scared of the light that they are willing to kill her. And I'm going to put this out there to people because I'm about to drop some truth bombs on you all about this Providence that is coming. Is the spiritual community will be under attack once more. The transits that are coming up are the same ones that happened during the witch trial. It's happening in different ways, though, because darkness is darkness no matter way you look at it. Darkness back then was let's hang or kill or burn. Darkness today is shutting you out with censorship. Darkness today is making you look like you're crazy. Censorship is saying, you know what, a scientist did not see that or approve that, so you know what, guess what, that's nothing. That is pseudoscience. Or they find dirt on you nowadays, right? Like, well, there's a moral compass out there of how you're supposed to be spiritually. So you fucked up there. So you're not in a place that you could say that you're part of this whole spiritual thing. Because I was talking about John of God the other night with Abby, and you know, he's been accused of raping, I think, hundreds of women now down in Brazil. If you don't know who John of God is, he's a healer, and you go down there and you spend your money, and he takes you in the back, and I guess he touches you, and I guess he touched them all the wrong way. I'm not defending him at all. I'm saying that, you know what, if that's true, that's pretty fucked up. That's a real case. But a bad case of it would be just like, you know, like we all fuck up. Maybe we make a post on Facebook and we get mad or something and we yell at somebody on there because they were trashing you or something, and you lost your emotions. Well, you're not a really good spiritual healer or teacher or anything, you know, you're actually just like this horrible person. But the scary part about this picture is how terrified people are of the light. How terrified they are that she's accepting the light. Which, in Palladian channeling, all the light is information, right? So a secret is meaning that it's in the dark, right? So occultism, the term of it, is actually comes from the moon. The moon, when it occults a planet, means when the moon crosses in front, like we're seeing with it in Capricorn lately, with Saturn and Pluto, which you can't see, when the moon passes over a planet, you can't see the planet anymore because the moon's in front of us and it's glaring so much light that it actually hides the planet. And what's interesting is that's where we get it from. Darkness is just misinformation, or especially just no information. So when you're in the dark, darkness isn't because you worship the devil. I mean, I'm not going to say that, you know, that's not true, because that probably is true, right? But I'm just saying that there is something to say about this whole entire notion about what is really going on of what darkness is. And when you start to be like, this person's dark, because in the spiritual community, you hear it all the time, right? Like, I don't know, that person's dark. How many times have you all heard that one? That one flies around a lot, right? Like, we don't talk to each other in the spiritual community more with like, that person's fucked up, or like, like at a bar, like, oh, that person's just a hoe bag or something, right? It's like pretty clear. It's like, yeah, they're dark. It's like that's like it. Like, that's like the term, Like, then we'll get into more specifics, but usually it's like, no, they're dark. But what's that darkness? It's some sort of information that you don't know about. And so judgment right now in our own spiritual community is going to need to be checked extremely. If we're all going to be going on this great quest, the fact that they're on the quest means they're part of the quest. So going back to the Mayflower and going back to the Great Voyage and going back to the voyage that's right now for all of us, we're all in this boat together. But, here it is 70 years later, they're not on the boat together anymore, and now they're finding who is not of the dark in this case. Because in this case, it was the light that was terrifying them, that she was connecting with the light, and not from the light that, they're used to, I guess you could say, right? Like, so it might be hard for people to see here on in the warehouse, but this is actually the chart of when the Mayflower had left, right? Even I'm having trouble on my little iPhone here. Oh man. But long story short, actually this is Jupiter and Neptune are going to conjunct in 2023. And so this is going to blow the lid off this whole entire witch thing. Because Neptune right now is in Pisces, and so in 1692, Neptune in Pisces is when the witch trial started. And there's no coincidence right now that Neptune is 1 degree away. Now in astrology, there's 30 degrees in a sign. Neptune is 1 degree away from where the witch trial started. That means the degree before that, where we're at now, was the build-up to it in 1691. Have you been hearing the term witch trial all year long? Trump? You might want to think, and I'm not here to say I'm some Trump supporter or something like that, but is there something to say about that? With the impeachment? Without actually any criminal wrongdoing? But a moral code? The moral code back then of this woman was she liked to look at the light. And she liked to dance naked probably and masturbate. But back then she didn't have a chastity belt. So guess what? She is on an impeachment trial and being hung. And that one's going to fuck up a lot of people when you think deep about that shit. About moral compass and code, because Saturn and Capricorn with South Node there, Jupiter, and Saturn and Pluto has never happened in our lives. Number one, in over a millennium with the South Node. And this means that we are rewriting what morals are. It's pretty cool for me to be here in this room here at High Vibe, and I can have a cigarette right now, or I could hit my jewel, and you guys won't judge me. So these are new things. These are new moral, we are rewriting what morals are. But you got to look deeper in morals opposed to cigarettes or jewels or now, here in California, I lived here my whole life. I mean, since 1995, they made weed legal. I'm just used to smelling weed everywhere on the streets, you know what I mean? But when you go to other states, like, oh my gosh, there's a guy on the side of the street smoking weed. Like, Jesus Christ. I don't smoke weed anymore, but it's hilarious to watch him jump around like that. I'm like, okay, yeah. But that's been morally accepted, even like presidents, like Obama. Yeah, whatever. But this whole idea of where moral compass is right now, when you become that judge and jury in the background to anybody that's just in their light doing what they can, you are now of the darkness. You are not of the light. And that is what will screw up your journey. Because the herd right now, we are in Capricorn for all of 2020 with Saturn. Even though it leaves and goes into Aquarius, it comes back. Jupiter is there all year. Pluto and Saturn are meeting here on January 12th. We got Jupiter and Saturn, which are going to be here the whole time. This isn't some random act. This is a random act of where people follow the old moral compass and turn themselves into sheep. The same way that King James during the Mayflower times went back to the Catholic ways and created, basically because his predecessor had his head chopped off and during the Civil War. And that brings up Civil War stuff, which we'll go into in a little bit here. Now, politics and power 2020. The reason why I'm going here is because I'm going to help you understand in 2020 alone, this is the rocket ship. But it has to deal with power. Whenever you think of the ability to have NASA, let's use that. Well, what was the president that brought NASA out? John F. Kennedy. He was elected with Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn. That's exactly where we're at right now. It takes a rocket ship of Jupiter and Saturn, the two biggest planets, to do the biggest things. Jupiter and Saturn are a 20-year cycle. That means they meet up every 20 years. Last time was in the year 2000, and it's actually pretty simple. 1980, 1960, you just keep going back, and it's the same cycle. And on the 10s is when they oppose. So exactly 10 years ago on this night, you all were feeling Jupiter oppose Saturn. You had a big vision in your life, and you had a reality, and you felt so far away from it, and you were ready to go. And guess what? 10 years later, here you are. Hi. The reason why it's such a big deal is because we have Saturn and Pluto, which are meeting up with actually the Sun and Mercury. That's a whole nother story. But Saturn and Pluto, which take over 33 years to come together, depends. Pluto's on a cycle anywhere from 12 years to 32 years. Depends on the sign that it's in. And what's crazy, it was Saturn and Pluto, they met in Libra in 1982 and 1983. That was the last time. So the fact that they're meeting up here finally together on January 12th of 2020, that's been a long time. That's been 37 years. And in that last 37 years, it had to deal with Saturn and Libra, which is actually exalted, we call it, meaning its second best position, because Saturn loves to be the judge, the jury, and the courtroom in Libra, the scales of balance. But it also deals with relationships, too. And Pluto's at one of its shortest stays of the whole zodiac is in Libra. So it's not that, it's actually its weakest position there. So Saturn and Pluto was intense, but it was intense more about relationships. And I've talked about this in so many things, so I'm not going to go too deep into this today because I don't want to regurgitate old information, but we are ending this whole entire relationship weird game. Any relationship that is not in alignment with you, you can't feel guilty that it didn't work because it was the biggest lesson in your life to know what is going to work coming into the biggest destiny of our lives on our journey. Because you don't want to go onto the Mayflower boat of now or the spiritual compact boat, whatever we call this boat. We can call it the yoga green juice, astrology, tarot, high vibe, mantra, manifesting boat. Whatever you want to call it. You want to go onto that boat with the best partnerships of your life. And that's what the last 37 years was teaching you. It was also teaching you where you're imbalanced, where you're not in alignment, because the scales are what show us where we're a little too far this way or not enough that way. So you've been recalibrating constantly. I think it's ironic in the world, too, if you look at the North Pole, and especially look at the last 37 years, the North Pole has been shifting. Recalibration. That's the same way a GPS does. It has to recalibrate your position, but if you've noticed on your iPhone or whatever and you're driving, it's like, it says I'm on the street right here, the street's here. Oh, wait, I just passed it because it went... That's actually going on in people's destinies right now and in their life, is this recalibrating if they're not in alignment to make sure that you're right at the right spot. You knew that was a street there, but you were relying so much on some GPS. Like you knew, you had an internal knowing that this is the street, but you were like, no, I'm going to trust this GPS that's recalibrating constantly. That's what you're doing in your own life right now about this destiny call. And especially, unfortunately, and this might be the hardest information, I've said this a lot though, is that part of this destiny call and the politics and the power of your own life is about the literal relationships you have. Your loved one, your romantic, your family, everything. It is gnarly. And if it's not fully in alignment, you're going to miss the boat. If it's in fully alignment, fuck yeah, those sales are going to go fucking amazing. And that's the big call everybody has here at the beginning of this new year, is making that determination. And I know it sounds so fatalistic, but you are talking to an astrologer. Pluto. This picture was just taken in 2018. I don't know if you know or remember, but we finally got pictures of Pluto. We never had them before. That's because Voyager 2 finally left the end of our solar system at the heliopause, going into intergalactic space, basically, out of our solar system. But why am I showing you a new picture of Pluto and a new picture of Saturn with the hex? Have you guys all seen the hexagram on this? That's on the top of Saturn, changing colors. And with Jupiter actually seeing the colors and the storms that are on there. Well, these three planets are all in the same sign. And ironic that we get all these new pictures of them. And way different viewpoints of them now. Now, the reason why I have Pluto first is because Pluto, the planetary scientists actually took away Pluto's full planetary identification. So technically, Pluto is a dwarf planet now. But we all know Pluto's a motherfucking planet. It orbits the sun, it comes around, and every time, especially it was found in 1930, and if you look at the world from 1930, it got intense. And if you think about how intense the world got in 1930, holy cow. Right after the Great Depression, bang. World War II, like the whole power of change, and how fast and rapid did the world grow. Pluto is the transformation artist. Pluto is the death bringer, but the life regenerator. And to actually see that energy, and to pause on that for a second, that is the vision of life and death. It is not pretty, but it also is so pretty at the same time. I would show you pictures of graveyards and, Halloween stuff, but at the end of the day, I think that those are just old cartoons and pictures in our head, but this is the actual literal version of it. But with Pluto behind Saturn, Saturn is the ruler of time. That's why on your Saturn return, every 28 and a half years old to 30 years old is when you become an adult. No, it's not 18. We all know at 18 we're not an adult. Like, we actually do the stupidest stuff from 18 to 28. You know what I mean? Like, we think we're adults, and I think that's part of the problem. I think if they actually went to the actual spiritual lesson of when you become an adult is when Saturn actually does its full rotation, because Saturn has the ring. Saturn is the last planet you see with your eyes. And it's interesting that Saturn has a hex on it. You've all been hexed in time. You've all been hexed in a reality that is controlled by time. And time is fate, and that means that the clock's been ticking, and the clock always knows where it's going to strike. It's not aimlessly going into some, where's the clock going today? No, you know exactly where you're going to be based upon, I got to be at my mom's house at 2 p.m. today, or I'm fucked. It's her fucking 50th birthday, and if I don't show up by 1:45 and da-da-da-da-da-da, there you are, connecting your place to a time. I don't think that it's weird that there's a hex literally on the top of Saturn. And even if you go back into understanding where the name Satan comes from, it comes from Saturn. Or you get Saturday is from Saturn Day. Because that's actually in, you celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday originally before Christianity. But of course, when Christianity was built, they wanted to go against another religion, so they created Sunday to worship the sun, which is actually the sun's day of the sun itself, like the sun. But with these two planets together in Capricorn, Pluto, I don't know, you know what? You could hire that guy to probably pretty much do anything looking at that thing. That's an FBI agent, that's a investigator, because Pluto likes to go and uncover every secret. Pluto is like a drill. You know what's funny is Capricorn rules dentist teeth, because transcendental is a term that always is about seeing beyond the physical, right? When you are able to see something past Saturn, like Uranus or Neptune or Pluto, that's transcendental, because now you're past the physical lines of your life and the structure of reality itself. We have to use an actual telescope to actually look at Uranus or to look at Neptune. Or you have to get on a spaceship to go there or a probe to go there. But with Pluto and Saturn, it is shifting the major reality, and it also is a hidden element that when it comes to power, when it comes to fate and destiny, it is so intense and intuitive that it is drilling like a dentist, like a root canal into your life. Because Saturn, as the dentist, he's precise and he knows what teeth. And if you don't take care of your teeth, that means that you don't have structure in your life. If you don't brush your teeth every day, if you don't take care of your teeth, guess what? Especially back in old days, if you didn't have teeth, you were looked upon as and frowned upon. Even in today's standard, let's be honest. Why do you think it's like I listen to KFI 640 all the time? Like, do you have rotten, crazy teeth? Like, go get some veneers now, you know? I like John and Ken. They're funny. But there is something to say about this moment in your life where it's like, with Pluto, that's the drill. And if you've ever had a root canal, I've had one in my life. Holy shit, will that wake you the motherfucking up? Because it's actually going into your nerves. And right now, the nerves are so intense with time and destiny and a fated knowing that you must go somewhere in your life on a quest and a journey that's beyond where you've ever even been before, and know that you have to have a massive amount of strength, determination, and will to get there, because that's what Pluto is, Scorpio. So you're mixing Scorpio with Capricorn, basically. You're mixing a businessman with an investor in destiny right now. And then you add Jupiter, the guru, the one that's a little over-optimistic, not a bad thing, but the one that brings giant storms to this whole mix. So not only is it a storm in your life to expand the biggest planet, right? All gas, it's the heaviest planet too. It's a heavy expanding moment in Capricorn. And Capricorn is not where Jupiter likes to be because it's very Saturnian. Like, no, your teeth are not okay. I know you keep telling yourself that you go to Whole Foods and buy coconut oil and keep saying that's going to fix your teeth, and that you use Tom's, unfluoride, toothpaste so much because you think your third eye's being fucked up. And I'm sorry to tell you, Jupiter, you need to get a root canal right now. And this is where spiritual beliefs too are getting a little bit of let's get back to like some reality. Because Jupiter is the guru and it is beliefs. And with Saturn and Pluto there, it's like, let's get to the real shit. And you know what? I'm going to say something I said 5 years ago at Conscious Life Expo. It's like a jail cell. And a guy, I've been in jail before. I was in prison for 30 days once in my life. And, they just would sit there and work out. And I remember sitting there at 18 years old, getting kicked out of the military. I was in the brig. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, what a waste of time. Like, they're not going anywhere. They get their hour a day. Sure, I get it. You want to stay in shape or because you're bored. I went and played spades and played fucking ping pong and had a much better time than looking at a bunch of other dudes sweating and grunting and power playing on the field like of a small little, you know what I mean? So the spiritual community does a lot of that, right? Like, well, I'm meditating every day. I'm doing all this shit. But why is my life all fucked up still? I've read The Secret. I've watched all this shit. Well, a lot of it, unfortunately, is not about, I know, yes, it's important to be in alignment spiritually, physically. But a lot of it is about understanding the awareness of the intuition that's calling you and having the balls to go do it. It's not about whether your third eye is going to be closed or not by fluoride or not. I'm just going to be honest with you all. I use fluoride every day. I drink fucking Sprite every day. Everybody tells me corn syrup's going to kill me. But I know where my fucking destiny is. And that's the trigger of the spiritual community, actually, to be honest with you, is that, again, these moral codes. It has to be this way. It has to look this way, da-da-da. That's the sheep. That is moving into the dark's way of controlling everybody, because the secret that I'm about to give you is the dark is secretly controlling the lightworker community right now by creating the same religion that it went against. All in new forms, though. Because with Pluto being the secret, Saturn being hexing you, and with Jupiter dealing with beliefs now, the spiritual community's belief systems will actually hex you into not being your true authentic self and trying to be something that you're not, that doesn't feel comfortable. If you don't want fluoride, then that's fine. If you do want it, then that's fine. The spiritual community, we're all on a boat. If you want to fart twice a day, fucking fart twice a day. If you don't want to take a shit because you're too afraid until you're blue in the face, do that. There should be no hesitation against anybody in how they're going to be, what they're ingesting in their bodies, what they are. Because we are all going on a quest and we don't know what it's going to be like. For the pilgrims, it was 66 days. I can tell you it's going to be a lot longer than that. And the more we as a community right now continue to do that shit, guess what's going to happen? We're all not going to like each other. And spirituality is going to turn into a religion, and it's going to have a leader. And then that leader is going to create rules. And then that's all going to come back down the same thing. And next thing you know, we're going to have Pope fucking green fucking tea and green smoothie fucking Pope. But the positive of this transit is when you believe in a destiny where honestly you have the control to kind of align with it, not the control of controlling your life, but control and aligning with the higher meaning and the deeper meaning, you're going to have the best life that you've ever had in your life that was preset from you from a higher order. Now, it might be hard for everybody in this room to see these slides, but this is the curse of the presidents in America every 20 years on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. So, a good example. 1800, Thomas Jefferson. His vice president is Aaron Burr. Do you remember the milk commercials? Aaron Burr. He shot, as a vice president, another vice presidential candidate and got away with it because guess what? Back in those days, it was still legal to go into a duel because that was the gentleman's way to handle a dispute. But there was a moral thing on whether that was right or wrong, even though it was legal to do. Killed the vice presidential, the competitor candidate. Did you see him get impeached? No. Jefferson just said, no, we'll get another vice president there. Boom! Shot him! Ah! Now, I can't go back to 1780 because the Constitution was being written. You know what I mean? And there was no election. It was just straight up like, Washington, you fucking won the war. You the man, dude. But when you start to go down it all, it gets crazy. 1820, this one's the craziest, James Monroe. He runs as president in 1820, and he is running, you know, just because if you look at Thomas Jefferson was not a Federalist. He was the vice president to John Adams, who was the second president, who was a Federalist, but before James Monroe was Thomas Jefferson, which was a Democratic Republican. James Monroe is running against a Federalist, but the Federalist Party can't find a candidate. They find a vice president, but they can't find anybody good. So the election comes, and guess what? It's only James Madison on the ticket. Or James Monroe. That's it. And one electoral vote went to the old president, Quincy Adams. Look at that electoral vote. 231 all the way. Bid 99.9%. What I'm about to show you is that on every election year on a Jupiter-Saturn 0 year, it doesn't matter what the fuck happens, the craziest shit in American politics with presidents happen. And if you think that 2020 is going to be simple, I'm going to show you how crazy it just continues to get. Again, so James Monroe, only one to be running. If I go back, hold on here. So So you get to 1840. Man, I wish these slides would. I might be able to do it this way. Let's see here. Screen mirroring. Yep. The curse is called the curse of Tippecanoe. Okay? It's the 20-year presidential curse. It's funny because they don't use astrology. They just know there's a curse. But it's all astrology-based, actually. So, all right. You get Harrison in 1840, dies of typhoid in 1841. 1860, we all know Abraham Lincoln. That was a crazy one. He walks into office and a civil war happens right when he gets into office. He's elected in 1860, but is inaugurated in 1861 and goes right into a civil war. And then is assassinated and shot. Garfield in 80, assassinated in 1881. The same year, 8 months after being a president, shot. William McKinley doesn't even make it that long either. About 8 months, assassinated, shot. And that's how Theodore Roosevelt becomes president. So Theodore had to run his second time in 1904 and won. But he was a badass, you know, and he also went to war in Cuba and killed people. He's the only president to, like, besides, of course, the founding fathers that killed people. You know what I mean? Like, that we know of. But there's that whole thing that he did it publicly, you know, like Theodore Roosevelt, like, was known as a war hero as a president. As president, went down there and rode on horses and shit. Pretty crazy guy. That's why he always, like, rode on a horse and shit. But anyway, now you go to Harding in 1920, has a heart attack in office, dies. 1940, this is where it gets crazy, because he does die, but you have to remember, he was president in 1933, so he ran the longest run of a president ever. So in 1940 was his third election. The only president to go 3 terms. He actually did a 4th. But the whole thing is, that is a weird thing for a president, right? Like, what the fuck? The president's going to be a 3rd termer? That's what that Jupiter-Saturn brought. Jupiter-Saturn brought John F. Kennedy, NASA, civil rights, so forth, shot and died. Youngest president also to ever have been president. And then you get 1880, Ronald Reagan, an actor, governor, who then gets shot in his first year. And then has his wife hire an astrologer for the rest of his tenure, and he survives through everything being planned through astrology. And then you get George W. Bush, which, of course, whether you believe it or not, right? Who knows? I think we all know 9/11 was an inside job. But assassination attempt with a plane that lands in Pennsylvania and not the White House. So, Jupiter and Saturn are no joke. Okay? But when you add this whole thing of power with all this Capricorn, this is a fight for the world right now. I also want to bring on that right now is getting gnarly in politics, because right now where Neptune is right now is exactly where the buildup to Lincoln was, the buildup to the Civil War. And I mean, this is literally, and this is where political cartoons got crazy. This is literally Lincoln being strapped down to a Democratic caucus on the back platform of Kansas and stuff. And it's like forcing slavery down the throat of a free soiler. And they're shoving a slave down Lincoln's throat to eat it. So if you think right now the politics are bad, like, we actually had it pretty fucking bad. You know what I mean? But what's crazy about this is manipulation through media on both sides are going down. with Neptune in Pisces, and it becomes very dramatic and imaginative. Back then, they didn't have television. That's what they had. This is no irony, this picture. No other president, especially in American history, because we've always been in fights with the Brits, believe it or not, has gotten the full parade that Trump did with the Queen, who just resigned. I did predict that in my magazine. Charles, who is next in line for the throne. And do you think Brexit was a coincidence right here? Right as the buildup of all this Capricorn? And the Queen resigning? No. It's all pre-planned. This was a pre-planned, hidden meaning for America and the UK to unite. Again, ironically enough, the same way it reunited through weird ways of the Mayflower, the same ways it united and disunited on a civil war, but really, also you got the War of 1812, you got the Revolutionary War. There's weird connections here, but it's always for power, trade, money. And the main thing is, that's what it's about with Capricorn. That this prophecy thing spiritually is great, but in the real world thing, right now, why do you think all this shit's going down? It's about power and control, and it's about money, and it's about who's going to own the world. And the only way for Britain to own the world was to get out of the EU. And also for Trump, the only thing that might save his presidency is actually making the biggest trade deal that he ever made in his life with the UK. And watching when the world economy goes through a shitstorm here in 2020, what if the pound and the US dollar just rocket ships and everybody else doesn't? And they start to see around the world like, I don't know, maybe it is real fucked up out there. Because there's no telling what's about to happen here in January on the 31st, even though it's going to take a minute for the UK to get out of Brexit, but it is going to cause massive market shifts. It's also going to shift the same thing. Uranus and Taurus is exactly when Hitler was rise to power, and it's ironic that the head of the EU right now is German. The Germans have all the money, and the Deutschmark is the only one in positive, and the Deutschmark right now is actually trying to become the leader of all the EU, which the UK and Germany have always been at odds. Which, ironic enough, if we replay the history of the 1930s with Uranus and Taurus like we're in right now, was the rise of Hitler. Stalin was best friends with Roosevelt, FDR, and with Churchill. America, England, and Russia. What two countries are accused of being hit by Russian interference in the elections? Do you think that the smear campaign for it to make Russia look bad? Why do all astronauts from America go up in Russian spaceships to get to the International Space Station? If they're out to kill us, why don't they just blow up our astronauts? We're not going up there. We stopped that program. Actually, under Obama. The whole space program. Like, nope, done. No more going into space. Unless it's a probe. Why do you think SpaceX is taking off? But this deal that's going down right here, I don't know. Based off the astrology, it's either going to save America or it's going to destroy it. I don't know yet. But where else does it really have to go except home? Which is the irony in all of the North Node of Cancer this time around. Because when the Mayflower took off in 1620, guess where the North Node was? Cancer. Now it's flipped, and now we're going back home. Now we don't want to be over here. Now we want to align back with where we came from. It's kind of fucking weird. But there's something to say about the same similarities as family right now is a big deal. Spiritual family and going beyond that understanding of survival right now through the relationships that you pick in your destiny is where home is found. Because with all this Capricorn, it feels like you're a dead zombie right now. And the only thing that gives you life is love, emotion, and family. And that's why we built High Vibe, to bring people together. And it's just about that. That's the main purpose. You know what I mean? I'm just using politics to show, because politics is now going to be the next 33-year plus crazy motherfucking show, because Saturn and Pluto met in Capricorn. Well, they haven't yet, January 12th. And it's all going to be us watching the world power shift. Now, Chiron. Chiron's talked about in astrology a lot. It's not talked about in Eastern astrology. But in Western, we talk about it all the time. You know, it was an asteroid that was found in 1977 in between Uranus and Saturn, which is a weird zone, right? We were just talking earlier about how you can only see Saturn with your eyes, but you have to have a telescope to see Uranus. Well, that zone in between there is the weirdo Chiron, because Chiron is not a planet, it's an asteroid, but it looks like it tried to be one, right? It tried really hard. Quasimodo tried his hardest to be a human, but no, he's up in the tower, you know what I mean, in Notre Dame, which burned down, by the way, this year. And the gargoyles were taken down a week before. Yeah, right. And the same day that the president of France, or sorry, is he prime minister or president? I forgot, but I think it is president. He was supposed to address all the yellow jackets that were all protesting that day. Oh, Notre Dame's burning. I can't go there. Sorry, everybody. I got to go save Notre Dame and talk about that shit. That's Pluto-Saturn shit that's been going on. So you have to start to read between all the lines. And you have to put on your X-ray goggles. But getting back to this note of Chiron here, all of us have a deep, deep wound. Some people think it's abandonment. Some people think it's whatever it is in your life. But the truth is that the human is wounded. That we're just a human in a time system and in a predetermined state that the more you become aware of it, you realize, gosh darn it, do I have any free will at all? Because the weirdness is Chiron is the understanding of humility. Human and humility go in the same context. So we admire a human by its humility, right? When somebody's being truthful or being totally vulnerable and exposing their true, authentic self, that's when we think of a human, right? With Chiron in between this realm, it's in between control and liberty and freedom of Uranus, of freedom to be independent, not be in Saturn's control. Because Uranus sits behind Saturn and goes, I'm not in your control system, bitch. I'm an outer planet. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm going to tilt this way, and I'm going to have my rings perpendicular. I'm not going to do it the same way like everybody else does. Well, Chiron was aligned with Saturn in the 60s because with Chiron, it heats up on a certain part of its orb around the sun, and then it cools off. Well, it heats up when it's closer to Saturn because Saturn's closer to the sun, and then when it's closer to Uranus is when it cools off, and we're going through the cool-off period now. And what's kind of crazy about Chiron now approaching Uranus, now that doesn't happen until 2043, but I will say that we are at a place now to where we are focusing more on how to break out of the cycles, how to break out of jail. And that's the quest we all have to take on this destiny, which ironically enough is we have to use the control system of fate and destiny and predetermination in order to get to liberty and freedom. That it was preset. Whether or not maybe our higher selves up there are hacking the system, if they are hacking the system, they're still hacking a preset determination of a willpower that you are being called towards, and you might feel like you're crazy. You might have to leave that marriage at 30 years. You might have to leave that job that was at whatever. You might have to leave that son or daughter of yours that's fucking injecting heroin inside of themselves and almost killing you and everybody around you all day. Those are the hard truths and the hard realities of this predetermination right now to get on your journey through this decade. Because what's coming up on this decade is not simple shit. I'm going to be honest with you. Especially the next 4 years. So let's take 2020, for example. it equals a 4, but it's 2020. I mean, we have to be in alignment correctly or we're fucked. 2, a lot of people don't know this, but numerology is based off planets first. So when you start to go to all these numerology sites and they're like, 4 is such a stable number, oh my God. Sorry. The original, especially in the Vedas, 4 is Rahu. And in Western, it's Uranus, which they both kind of have like a similar aspect. But Pluto leaves Capricorn in 2023 and then comes back in 2024. So let's do the numerology. 2020 is a 4. 2021 is a 5. 2022 is a 6. 2023 is a 7. So we get to that spiritual number. We get to that really weird moment there where we are like shifting into a new weird reality, because that's really when the age of Aquarius is going to pop, is when Pluto gets in. Yes, Jupiter and Saturn meet on December 21st of 2020, ironically enough, exactly 8 infinity Saturn, 8 years from the whole galactic shift point is when Jupiter and Saturn meet in Aquarius and in air sign for the first time in hundreds and hundreds of years. It's been in Earth. It was in Taurus in 2000. Why do you think like the .com, boom of 2000 kind of went down, but actually the truth is do you think it really went down, or do you really think that power players knew how to play it right and made things like Facebook and all that shit? And now look at Google and Alphabet, right? But they're also like kind of on their weird way down. This is also why people are afraid of AI, is because all this Aquarius is coming in soon, this decade. This decade will be about Aquarius and Pisces. And when you get into that realm, it's the last 2 signs of the zodiac, which mean we are dealing with the most outer realms of the unknown. And the fear right now with Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn, again, is control. So it's like, oh my God, I have no control if AI will come and kill us. Like, what the hell? Like, I didn't sign up for this shit. I didn't sign up for that. Well, what if I were to tell you that AI is the last thing that you should even be nervous about? The first thing you should be nervous about is if you are not going to make the biggest choice of your life right now. Ironically enough, here even on this New Year's Eve and coming into this week, the first week of 2020 is no joke. The first 12 days are extreme. Because as Chiron sits between Saturn and Uranus, that in-between space of our humility, of humanity, of this wound that we feel in our lives between being caught between predetermination and free will, because the truth is if you had free will right now, you would not be here. Okay? That's the truth. But in between this wild choice that we're all going through, and this is a weird time because Chiron in Aries right now, for the next 7 more years, Chiron takes forever to get through Aries and Pisces and Taurus. But over in Libra and Scorpio and shit, it flies through there. Like 1 year, 2 year, like, that's because the wounds we don't want to feel are through relationships. We don't want to feel the wounds and the humility with sex stuff too much, right? That's like shit we don't want to deal with much. But I guess for some reason our biggest lesson in life is Aries, ego, Pisces, soul, and Taurus, our self-worth. There's something about those 3 things in life, your soul, your identity, and your self-worth, that is where you are the most fucked up when it comes to sensitivity. Is when somebody tells you your fucking soul's fucked up, oh, it's crushing. When somebody tells you you're an egomaniac, oh, it's crushing. Or when your ego wants something and it doesn't get it, oh. Or when you have money in your pocket and you think you're balling, fuck yeah, I'm balling today, baby. I got I got $1 on it. Woo! See how that thing just flew away? That's crushing when you lose all your money and go bankrupt or Or when you don't have something, you go to somebody's house and it's like, fuck, look at this house. I wish I had this life. You go back to your place and you're like, it's a fucking rat nest here. Those are actually, believe it or not, sure, humility goes through all 12 of the zodiac signs, but why does it stay so long through Pisces, Aries, and Taurus? It's because these are the 3 zones that were the weakest. So this whole decade of 2010 to 2020 was all about Pisces. The spiritual journey has been nothing but a bunch of, oh my gosh, I got an ace and I know for sure it's blackjack. Wait, it's a 3. Fuck, 13. Dealer, I got 20. Chiron and Pisces sucked. Sure, it was the most healing journey of your life to become spiritual, but it came with a lot of crushing blows. A lot of imagination that did not turn out the way you wanted it to, but in many ways it did. But now that it's in Aries for this decade and coming into Taurus, fuck. You know, it's ironic, it was 1969 is when Uranus went into Aries last time, and remember, we didn't find Chiron. We didn't find Chiron until 1977. Why do you think every car in the 70s looks like a piece of fucking shit and weird and fucked up, and the fucking couches and the furniture and shit? Chiron and Aries. So if you were born with Chiron and Aries, there is a very weird part of yourself in your identity that you feel like you are a 1970s car. Or you're the shag carpet, wherever you're at. And you might even look at yourself like that all the time. True. Or it's always like, how come I can't be exactly what I want to be the way I want it to be? Well, you know what? Ford, Chevy, and Dodge are saying the same shit fucking every year. Fucking Chiron and Aries. Like, can you just make a car that looks like a car, please? It's like, I'm trying, man. I don't know, dude. I'm just really high in stone, bro. Fucking Jesus Christ. Like, I don't even want to be at work right now. Fucking there's a hippie party over down the street. Can I go? That was the 70s. In many ways, where we live in the 70s. But consciously, I hate to say it, there was this whole idea of consciousness like rising through the 70s, but with Chiron and Aries there, it was more of an identity escape. Bell bottoms, disco, long hair. We built identities to find ourselves. Anybody who continued pushing that, God bless them. Because most people turn that off. I know my mom did. My mom was all about disco. I watched all of it. I have my mom's picture. She graduated in 76. Like, you know, she was in the middle of it. My mom, for her 60th, we had a disco party. And when my stepdad, you know, rented a place as big as this and had a full disco band and we all dressed in disco clothes and shit, my mom felt like she was right back at home. But it's like, why in your spirituality and your destiny right now and where you're going in your life, why are you going to have to wear some sort of identification of the destiny in a weird way to heal yourself? Because Uranus went through Aries this decade, from 2010 to 2019. And Uranus and Aries, why do you think the whole internet boom of identities came out? YouTubers, Instagrammers, Facebookers, the people who did the Uranus and Aries thing and put an identity out there won. Now Uranus and Taurus is like what you build off that now. So if you're still having identity troubles, this is going to be an extremely hard decade because it's going to be very hard to know what your destiny is just because you never identified who you are and what you are in yourself, which actually creates ego. Which is the number one moral code thing in the spiritual community of like, that person's egotistical. Well, they're saying that in the back of a van down by the river. Which might be the way that identifies with their life, because I'm totally the person who thinks everybody should be how they're going to be. But at the same time, underneath that soul, when you really get down there, because we're not down there every day, there's that beating up inside like, I fucking hate it in here. I'm fucking sick of this shit. We're humans. We were not put on this planet naturally. Think about that one. We think nature is this natural thing. That it is, though, but the human somehow is not. We're the only ones, they always say in nature doesn't build in straight lines. Look at how this room is. Look at how the stage is. Look at how the pyramids are. Nature is, if you understand fractal geometry, Like fractal geometry was beautiful in the 80s. It came out with computers to be able to compute finally the understanding of geometry in a measure of infinity and actually see what it looked like through colors and fractals. And was able to find that nature, if you look at a tree, there is no geometry that you can actually define it by, right? Like it's too beautiful in essence and it grows however it's going to grow. Not humans. What if we already are in an AI system? What if all those planets that's going around this Earth is the hard drive spinning that you are in? I don't know if y'all know, but hard drives spin. Well, the old ones do now. The new solid slate ones are different, but that's what's changing, though, is that with Chiron and Aries here, those that still lack identity are going through the harshest wounds. And it's hard because in today's society, especially with all this Capricorn, it's all about the successful, right? Like, this is Monopoly Man on fucking steroids, and he took a little LSD and he fucking snorted a line of speed. And that's hard because the ego feels very vulnerable to that whole success thing because it's over-dominating. This next 2 weeks is going to be the biggest domination of the Monopoly Man ever. Like every day he goes stronger. Every day his cane gets bigger. Every day his depends get bigger. But he's out of position. And this is what the scary part is that with all that Pluto and Capricorn, that hidden element that's destroying the structures, but at the same time obsessed with keeping it. So you're watching both happen, right? You're watching a world where the rules are splitting apart and they're breaking apart. While at the same time, the control systems are going stronger. It's a cause and effect that's happening at the same time. That if you're going to go one direction and be more, going in a direction where you're going to get rid of the rules and be more free as a soul, I guess you could say, there's others that have been planning to capitalize on that at the same time. Always in astrology, the thing that I can teach you the most as being a teacher of astrology is there will always be money. Even if I have to take a shit and fucking give it to you for something, you will give me something back. There's always going to be successful people, Capricorn. There's always going to be tribes. There's always going to be spirituality and drugs. There's always going to be egos and people without egos. There's always going to be people with Gemini that talk and people who don't say a word. There's always going to be people that have big families and those that like to be single. There's always going to be people with no emotion and people who have emotion. There's always going to be Leos that fucking love the limelight and those that are tyrants. Or just obsessed with their fucking self. A little both, all three. There's always going to be Virgo swiffering and building quantum computers and servicing the world and nursing everybody and tripping out on if the bug went underneath the couch or not. You know what I mean? Like, did it go under there? I don't know. I don't want to move it. Oh, but it's because it's so clean. I don't want to move that thing. I love Virgos. They're the most, I think, innocent and beautiful side of the zodiac. There's always going to be Libras having a relationship issue, whether it's a friend, lover, or something. You know what I mean? Like, well, what's going on with that? You know? There's always going to be Scorpios that are fucking going to tell you how it fucking is. That the second you backtrack on them or pull away from them, they will pull away from you. They are the master pull-outers. Just as well as they know how to jam it in. There's always going to be beliefs. There's always going to be people who don't believe. There's always going to be skeptics. But there's also going to be people who believe blindly. fully into faith of Sag. There's going to be people who adventure and people who won't, people who will expand and people who will not. There's always going to be, and now we're back at Capricorn, which is ironic because where Sag and Capricorn meet in Western is exactly the galactic center. And where do you think the eclipse just was that we just had on Christmas? Oh, just a couple degrees away, 3 degrees away from the galactic center. The nodes are coming to the galactic center this year in 2020. We're going to have a Venus retrograde for the first time that will not be in an eclipse in Gemini. So what happened was in 2004, we had a Venus eclipse. It happened in Gemini because Venus cycles are very weird. Every 8 years, Venus will retrograde in the same sign it did before. That creates the star system, which actually is ironic. The star of Venus is what you see in Witch or any kind of like old magic stuff, which they associate with the pentacle, which they associate with magic, and they associate with the devil. And you get 666 because Venus is the number 6. And the way that the star pattern works, three sides, anyway, all this stuff comes from magic. But in 2004, Venus retrograded in Gemini, and it eclipsed the sun. That means we could see Venus cross the sun. Now, eclipses of Venus happen in pairs, and then they take 120 years to happen again. So in 2004, you need to look at your life, and you have to go, you are getting a message from Spirit about whether you realize it or not on like knowing the understanding of who you are, what you're here to do, the kind of relationships that you like, and getting a hint of that. 2010, same thing. Boom, Venus eclipse. Or sorry, 2012. I got to do 8 years. Sorry, 2012. And there's no irony that Venus eclipse on June of 2012 was the premonition to the whole Mayan calendar shift, and it was the last Venus eclipse. We have not had Venus come back into Gemini to retrograde after an eclipse. The last time would be 1996, which ironically enough in 1996 is when Jupiter was in Capricorn. Wasn't Bill Clinton re-elected in 1996? I think he was. So we're ending, gosh, a 16-year cycle that you're going to finally understand what the fuck happened in my relationship and my self-worth and my understanding of the message in 2010 or 12. In the summer or in the spring, and why did also a similar energy happen in 2004? But with the twins, it could be dualistic. It could be you saw both twins. Now you're about to find out here in 2020. Then Mars is going to go retrograde in Aries, its natural home and sign. It's going to enter in June. It's going to stay all through the rest of 2020. We're going to have Mars in the same sign forever, and you're going to be able to see Mars because it's going to be closest to the Earth in its home sign of war, identity, with Chiron, squaring all this Capricorn stuff. So that's a battle of the gods because Mars is at its home in Aries and it is wanting to battle and fight. And it's going to square that destiny. If you are going to pull out of your own identity that you know you are, the universe is going to give this last chance here in 2020 toward your premonition into the next decade because you're too afraid to fully do it. Because you have issues with emotion. The North Node's going to be out of Cancer. And it's going to be all Capricorn. That means there is no more nodal activity with all that Capricorn. So guess what? It is going to be about whether or not you know how to deal with that huge thing called success, hierarchy, and you know how to get through the system, and you know how to get through the storms of the boat, and you have to be courageous, and you have to continue. You know, the spiritual community is going to go like, yay, destiny's here. We made it! I'm seeing the archangels now. But when the real shit comes down, holy shit! Like fucking, I need to call my dad. Like, does he have a, you know what I mean? People like don't have to have to realize like this is a beautiful thing. But the most beautiful thing is whether or not you're gonna weather the storm of 2020 that's gonna try and divert you back to continuing your old patterns and keep you in an old story. Because Capricorn wants to play with the hex I showed you earlier. How much time do I have left? So as we go through this here, Saturn and Neptune made their sextile this year. Whatever deep spiritual message you got of a direction you need to go, if you don't go, if you understand the history of England after pretty much 22, 23, when they stopped pretty much sending people for that reason, they ended up in a civil war and a fucking king got his head chopped off in the public. You do not want to be part of the sheep. You want to get on your ship that you know. And you know what? All those pilgrims, because my family are pilgrims, my pilgrim family then came on the Oregon Trail to Oregon, and then my grandfather came here from Oregon. My family has literally been in America since 1620. And now I'm on the internet putting out my ship. And going in the direction nobody wanted me to go 10 years ago. Even my own family. Actually, my pilgrim family didn't. My dad was pretty cool. My dad's an Aquarius, so he was like, fuck yeah, dude. A lot of girls watch that shit, right? I was like, fuck yeah, they do. I love having Aquarius pops, he's just real. I'm like, well, I guess so, if you want to look at it that way, pops, but I was kind of in it for, all this astrology and shit, but yeah. Believe it or not, I wish I could zoom in, but my ancestor is the one, Isaac Allerton, who is laid back in the chair. Oh, that's not the wrong one, Providence. He's laid back in the chair, and did we lose this thing? Here we go. Actually, I can show you all. Oh, we are screen mirroring. All right. So. And tell me if you guys think I'm related. You also need to do this year in 2020, your lineage, your name, and the reason why it is your name is literally not a joke. If you have issues with your family, whether you're adopted or not, you have to find your real family here. And understand your lineage and why you came here. Ancestors are part of the journey. That's why the eclipses happened in Leo that were over America. That's my that's a bad picture, but he's smoking a pipe, leaning back in the chair in the back, letting them all kind of do their work. And he brought all the money and got all the money and was the trader that paid back the money for the Mayflower. Is that a better picture? I want to see some pipe smoking. Yeah, there it is. Hell yeah. He's a pretty badass motherfucker. See that? That's me. That's my line. And his daughter, Mary Allerton, so he's my 12th great-grandfather. My 11th great-grandmother is Mary Allerton, who is the oldest surviving person from the Mayflower. She died, of course, but you know what I mean. So to finish this thing off, the reason why I'm bringing this up about lineage is because this is the spiritual family and home. The spiritual community has no home. And I'm not here to tell you that it's high vibe. You know what I mean? Because then it becomes like kind of too weird in that way. It is you finding your spiritual home of your own independent sovereign place so you can go through this gnarly destiny that is a journey. You would not want to be on a boat that you got called to go on alone. And you can't have fear of abandonment, that you're going to be shipwrecked or that somebody's going to just, off the plank, fucker. That's all the Saturn Libra shit from 1982 and 1983. People born those years have some weird shit with relationship shit, like the gnarliest ever. Saturn, Pluto, and Libra. It's crazy. They off the plank a lot. Or obsessed, too, in crazy ways, right? Because Pluto and Saturn. So you're not going to get fucked over by what you've been called to. That transit ends January 12th, and it's already ended. The eclipse happened. You already know it deep in your heart. Don't be hexed by Saturn right now into the control system, but we have to use fate to get out of fate. I know that might sound crazy. We have to use fate to get out of fate. That's the only way out. Because it's a fated moment that Neo in the Matrix, in the second one, when he meets the architect, has to make a choice. And he shows him on the wall, every time you made this choice, you freaked out. And every time you made the choice to save Zion by restarting the population and starting the Matrix over. We are not going to do that in this room. You're going to go for love and save Trinity. And even though the architect's like, there's no fucking way it's going to happen, you're going to die and you're going to lose. That did not happen. Why do you think Matrix 4 is coming out and they're filming it right now? Don't get lost in the spiritual belief system so much that you believe that fluoride or whatever is going to stunt your whole spiritual thing. I'm being real here because Jupiter and Saturn are in Capricorn. And they tried to say that John F. Kennedy could not be elected president. Well, guess what? He was. During Jupiter, Saturn in Capricorn. Vice president shooting another vice presidential candidate. Doesn't go to jail. No problem. It was legal then. I showed you everything about the politics in the world and what's going on with politics. And there it is right there. There's no coincidences, folks. That's going to happen. And that was all pre-set up. And personally, I don't think, I'm putting it out right now. I've already done the chart of Trump. Trump isn't the next president, or I think it ain't even make it to the next president. It ain't going to be a bit based off impeachment. He was set up to set up this deal. Once this deal's done, something weird will happen. You're going to be dealing with like a Mike Pence or somebody from the deep state, and you're going to be dealing with like a Pete Buttigieg. That's my thing, because if you think of Jupiter and Saturn when it was in Capricorn, it was John F. Kennedy. He would be the youngest running president. He was unique. He had a young kid and a wife that was very weird because a bunch of old guys who were dying for the last fucking 100-something years, right? He's a gay, openly gay president, and he was a mayor. And he's got a little bit of a JFK moderate in the middle thing going on. And who did he run against? Nixon, who eventually was impeached. Well, not impeached, even weirder, but was about to be. So there's way too many coincidences here, way too many signs saying there's something weird here. And Trump's here to, as he is Scottish, and has his golf course in Scotland, and Scotland's wanting their independence after this vote. There's a lot going on about the battle of the world that I've been trying to show you all, and you can't be weird about it. The Chiron thing I was finishing up here with it being closer to Uranus now than Saturn is we are trying to find our independence and liberty from the fate and control systems of a predetermined world. It's going to take a while, but you have to use fate now and get on the boat. The boat was already shown to you this year in a vision, and it was exact 2 months ago when Neptune and Saturn made their final sextile in their home signs. Will never happen in our life again. So do not miss the boat. Saturn is out of Capricorn and goes into Aquarius and starts to write a new record. And in 2043, when Uranus and Chiron meet in Leo with Saturn and Scorpio, that'll be a square point. It'll be very weird. But what I'm here to tell you is the human itself and the vulnerability we feel is the vulnerability of fate. Not that you've been abandoned. Not any of the emotional human things that fucking you cry over and lose, and I feel you and all that because we all are there. But it's, you've got to serve it up to a higher reason, which is fate. For a reason. And this one dealt with unfairness and fucked up relationships because it was Saturn and Pluto and Libra since 82 and 83. That's ending. Now it's going to be governments and how the world and who owns the world and how little space you have in between because you didn't get on that fucking boat. Because I could have sat here and just done this presentation about every planetary transit happening from now to 2020. I mean, I already showed you Jupiter, Neptune. I already showed you the witch trials are going to come back with Neptune coming in 19 degrees, exactly like it did in 1692. When Demonology, the book, came out by King James, Neptune, 19 degrees, just wasn't in Pisces. I'm telling you, folks, the witch trials are coming for the spiritual community. You better get on your fucking boats. And you better have your partnerships and your alliances with people who are in this world. If you're aligned with somebody who's not in this world, fucking run. Run. You will be on trial, and you will literally, especially for just being part of the light. That's the most fucked up part. Is this picture is what I'm going to try and, if I could tattoo you all right now, I'd tattoo this as your tramp stamp on your fucking back. But everybody would have it. So whoever you fucked would see it. Even the guys too. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, they'd have to deal with that one. Maybe I'd put it on the front for the guys, like, you know? Here you go, bro. But that's the thing, is this is going to be a major moment where she and I want to end with this picture, because you know what? She literally is what we all are now. And she's looking at the light, and everybody in that room is terrified. They're terrified of the light. And anybody in your life right now that is terrified of the light, this is where Saturn has to drop its truth. This is where Pluto has to drop its truth of endings. And Saturn is the original ruler of endings, because it's the time of your death, right? They even say that, the time of your birth, the time of your death. Saturn's the original ruler of death. There is a death coming to people in your life that are of the dark. And all the dark is scared of your light. They don't understand it. They will never understand it. And they will look at you like you're crazy. Look at this woman right here. Oh my God! Or is she saying, I wish I was like her? But you can also see the other women are kind of in a way like, I already can see the mom in the back like, daughters, do not look like this woman. Make sure, because you have to remember, Pluto was in Capricorn in 1750 through 1760 through 1776, right? A 16-year transit of Pluto and Capricorn. And those are the rules we're ending now, which all were brought from this whole Protestant. The last time Saturn and Pluto were in Capricorn was in the 1500s. So you've got this whole 1500 moving to 1700. Now we're moving to 2019 into 20. Like, what the fuck? Like, are you really still an old fucking grandma from 1760 through 1776 in how you live your goddamn life? I have to be in bed right now. I'm this old. This is a journey that is taking you way beyond the reality that you've ever known. And you can't be afraid to be of that light. Because as we stare at that screen, it's dark. Well, my ancestors said, no, it's not. I didn't even touch that motherfucker. But I'm here to tell you all that we write the laws of the reality in a manner, in our own destiny together, that everybody gets included at the table. But they also did not bring people on that did not see the same light. Could you imagine having somebody in that room right now on the Mayflower being like, I really don't want to fucking go. I really want to go to the Bahamas. Like, is anybody taking me to the Bahamas? Does anybody have any more of that rum back there? Everybody would look around like, what the fuck did this guy get on the boat? How did he get on the boat? That's your life or not your life. That or what I just told you. And you're going to be hearing fucking margaritas in paradise all fucking day. And being like, oh my God, what the fuck did I do? So the positive part of all this is your providence is here. It was shown to you. The transits that we have just right now, and for the first 3 months of January, or first 3 months of 2020, is the biggest rocket ship we've ever had. I showed you the space program started with Jupiter and Saturn, and look what just happened. There is a 6th division in the military now, which is called the Space Force. I'm telling you, you do not want to be... When I went and did my first past life regression in 2011, and I'm in the chair and I got hypnotized. And it's Pam Teague, who was here earlier with the crystals. You know, she's like, okay, I'm going to put you to a movie theater and the screen's going to open. What do you see? I'm like, it's black. She goes, oh, it means you're going to have to go through and actually be through the life. And I was terrified. I'm like, what, you mean I have to like go through the actual like life? She's like, yes. And thank God, because watching the movie opposed to being in the movie is a lot more fun and real. And that's your calling right now of Providence. Are you going to be the movie, or are you just a watcher? Are you in your character, or are you watching a character? Are you afraid of listening to the deepest Neptunian intuition and story that is divinely called of your life? Or do you really just think you're crazy? They were considered crazy, and you all wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. That's the truth. And I can say for myself, I wouldn't be here myself, actually, literally. And there's no coincidence that it's 400 years. We're in a 4-year. Hello. Because Saturn and Pluto end here, say the deepest goodbye of your life. Know that all the relationships that didn't work out in Libra from 82 to 83 all the way to now were to teach you to get on this boat. No, I'm not going to lie. This is not going to be an easy boat. This destiny. It's not going to be butterflies and angels right away. You know what I mean? It's a boat. There's rats and fucking... But there's some good times. And I just want to say you have to honor and you have to learn to transmute with Pluto and let go. And just be like, that's not in my true peace of aligning with my story that the universe wrote for me to get out of the story that we all don't want to be trapped in anymore, to go to that free will truth that we all really want to go in a dimensional form that is not just some fucking esoteric, like ethereal spirit that's just like up in the middle of nowhere like molecules. This physical reality is badass because we all wanted to be here. There's a purpose for it all to be here. And that purpose is to not get hexed into watching the story and having the story tell you how to live your story, but letting you see the story and being the participant of it and fully trusting in it and going with it and knowing that the last 37 years did not fuck you over. It gave you the power to make the story grand. Thank you very much. I love you all very much. And I'm wishing you all the best through this decade. I know it will be intense. It does get a lot easier 2026 through the end there when we start to see some Uranus, Neptune stuff. And we do have Neptune. And I didn't even go into the slide here at the last, but Neptune comes into Aries, of course, which is when the Civil War started in 1861. So we do have a buildup of a Civil War. We do have a buildup of World War II. We do have a buildup of the Revolution in 1776, all happening right now. Same transits, all building up to hit at the same time. Like boom, 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 boom. Not separate, together. Get on that motherfucking boat. That's why I'm here. My Jupiter and Capricorn is telling you to get on the fucking boat or you're going to miss out. I love you all very much. Thank you very much for coming out. We're just going to take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to do a talk real quick with me and Stargirl, and then we're going to do Dr. Stephen Schwartz, and then we're going to do New Year's.